1997, America reels at one of the most bizarre stories in the history of cults and religion.
One on top of another. One bed here, one bed there.
4 bodies, 6 bodies, 10, 12, or 16, now 19.
Body after body.
Grand total to 39.
39 people deceased.
Victims of religious cults unfortunately ended up here due to susceptibility and vulnerability to cult influence. The tragic death of these former members is a result of their mindset. Good morning, my name is Vera Palacios, and my topic is about the consequences of religious cults. My research question is, since the year 1990, how have religious cults in America negatively affected former female members in the United States? Religious cults in America have caused former female members to suffer negative mental, physical, and relationship health. The larger context of this issue would be herd mentality and conformity. The synced groupthink leads to liabilities of synchrony. An example of such, as seen in the chart provided by College Board, shows the liability of synchrony, one of them being less divergent thinking in complex tasks. These were members who fail to think for themselves and fall prey to groupthink, unfortunately experience negative mental health. Which brings me to my first claim. The act of conforming to religious cults in the U.S. has negatively affected the mental health of former female members. A study was conducted on former female members of Christian-affiliated cults in the U.S., and the author explains, the former members of this group describe being pressured to conform. They comment that if they failed to comply with expectations, they were asked to attend private counseling sessions, in which they were berated for their lack of obedience. This expectancy can challenge the mental health of members. A participant reported, there was no community involvement anymore and no fellowship with other churches anymore. They started to preach that they are the only ones going to heaven. They certainly believe that you're absolutely privileged to be sitting here listening to the word of God. It is noteworthy that 36% reported that serious emotional problems had emerged after leaving the group. 24% sought out professional help for emotional problems, and 3% had been hospitalized for these problems. Moving on, former female members have experienced negative physical health due to their involvement in a cult. According to S. Landa, other documented physical and psychological abuse in cults include incest, starvation, denial of medical care, and emotional deprivation. The abuse experienced by these members varies, but they are equally violating. There is as much mental abuse as there is physical abuse. The manipulation tactics used by these leaders poses a risk to the physical well-being of the member. Specifically, women are at larger risk of being sexually abused. The Children of God, a religious cult headed by David Berg, who can be seen on the bottom left, serves as a prime example. Berg claimed to show a different image of Jesus. The New York Post states, which pushed women to show Jesus' love by submitting to sex with men. Jones, the granddaughter of the father, felt that pressure as early as 6 years old. Faith Jones was brought up in this religious cult, she was sexually coerced into performing sexual behaviors. 2 uncles of hers tried to French kiss her, and when she tried to avoid them, they asked her, "Why can't you be more loving?" This is an example of the brainwashing tactics referenced previously. If Faith decided not to engage in these sexual behaviors, she wasn't being forced, she would be tricked into thinking that she was at fault. Kent, the author of this article, focusing on this cult, states, according to a former member, young girls were forced to strip almost nude in front of the full membership and are forced to take cold showers. Another religious cult, which also ended in tragedy, would be the People's Temple. In November of 1978, these victims of the largest mass suicide in the U.S. were poisoned by the leader to drink a poison-laced punch, and some were even held at gunpoint. This also shows how the leaders manipulated their members into physically hurting themselves. To the right of the page is Jim Jones, the founder of this cult. Women were physically and sexually abused in this cult. The abuse included having to live in a sexually coercive environment. To my left is a quote from John Jalalik, which states, 40% of the women present they had been sexually abused in their cult. Their bodies were no longer a part of them, but a part of their leader, as their right to say no was taken the minute they joined that cult. Typically, women aren't honestly aware of the dangers, as cults paint themselves to be a safe space and then trick them into trusting them, and then they gain to their advantage, in which they manipulate women into doing whatever they want them to do. As stated by Fowler, the physical abuse is severe, sometimes including torture and killing. Religious cults have also caused the relationship health of former female members and their families to deteriorate. The reason for this being is to serve a leader and to gain more control of members. By cutting ties with family, this strengthens the bond within the leader and the member. While the bond is strengthened, that family intimacy has been destroyed. These controlling demands eliminate the emotional connection among relatives. A study was conducted to examine how conforming religious cults has affected relationship health among family. Michelle, a former member of religious cult, states, "Even within the group, I was told who to associate with. Quite literally, they preach this thing that you have to cut ties with your family." Not only is the relationship health affected, but the health of the members is also affected. 91% of families have suffered negative impacts in life. 30% of participants recognize the consequences of the family member generated negative repercussions in their mental health. 10% experience anxiety, 8% depression, 6% trauma, and 5% sleep problems. These findings prove that both relationship health and health overall is negatively impacted. Cults are known to appear with open arms and hiding their true intent. There aren't many solutions, as members typically join cults because they are in desperate need of feeling like they belong somewhere and are tricked into joining through brainwashing. One solution would be educating yourself. Conducting research isn't very time consuming. That way, if one is thinking of joining a cult, you're both learning about it and at the same time avoiding danger. There are many articles specifying how to avoid cult manipulation and brainwashing, such as the article by Alex Marwich, in which she mentions they revolve around a figurehead regarded as charismatic, alive, or dead, and their followers always believe that they have been gifted with the answer. Unfortunately, people who think of joining cults don't necessarily think of researching beforehand, which could potentially save lives, and brings me to my next possible solution. According to LA Times, in a 4 or 5 year college career, experts said a student will probably be approached at least once by cult recruiters. Members who have fallen victims to these destructive cults don't have a choice, but others still can. A simple social media post can get the word out and possibly save lives. At UC Berkeley, presentations on cults occur regularly in resident halls and other gathering spots on that campus. This solution would be the best solution, and it would be the most effective since putting the word out there can save lives. This is my work cited. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, I do have 2 questions for you. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the whole process of the presentation?
In the beginning, my research question was just talking about cults, but I felt like that was too broad. So there wasn't a specific age group or a specific gender. So then I narrowed it down to religious cults, and I focused on 2 main ones, which would be the People's Temple and the Church of God. And then I also started focusing on women instead to make it even more specific. As at first started with just everyone, like women, men, and children, and then I narrowed it down to just women.
Okay. And what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic in the future?
I would say to focus on a specific cult, like a specific religious cult, instead of just I wish I did that, honestly, because I think it would have helped me to be make my sources more credible and stuff, to just focus on just one. But it was honestly really hard for me to just focus on one because there wasn't that much research on it.